Hi, I'm your host, Brent Feldman, and we're back with another episode of Mix and Matchbox. Today, we are joined by John Gross. He's an EOS implementer and part of EOS Worldwide. Hi, John. How are you doing?
Brent, I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. I know we know each other personally, but I'm looking forward to digging in a little deeper and getting some of these questions out.
Well, thank you. I look forward to it.
Awesome. Cool. Well, I'll start, and usually this is the thing. I start with a background question, and you have a pretty interesting one, but it says, and I do a lot of LinkedIn research here, but it says you started out in the Air Force, and I know you're an engineer by training, but how did you get from that array of careers into EOS?
Well, one of my mentors once introduced me as having a very diverse background. And I got here because I love to fix problems, and I really like helping people, and I'm terrible at saying no. I also like to learn stuff. So I went to Washington University on an Air Force ROTC scholarship. I got my engineering degree, went in the Air Force, and I was a program manager in cruise missiles. And they had issues, and they kept having opportunities, and I kept saying yes and yes. And I got to go do a lot of cool things, and I got to meet a lot of cool people and do some cool stuff. And I got out of the Air Force after Desert Storm 1. I went into manufacturing, and I was plant engineer for a startup on what was at that time the largest pasta plant in North America. And I just kept saying yes, and I kept saying yes. And then more companies followed and went into production management, and I went into site operations, and finally I landed one day in EOS because I just keep saying yes, and I just keep wanting to solve problems and help people. And I'll just say that this is the most rewarding thing I've done since I was in the Air Force, personally, because you get to help so many people and meet so many great people.
Yeah, that's great. I will definitely say saying yes is like, that introduction to, definitively usually more work, but at the same time, don't say yes, you can't get those interesting experiences either.
No. And you do have those moments like, how did you get here? Oh, I volunteered. Oh, I'm sure you know that. You run your own business,
Oh, definitely. Yeah, raising your hands part of the job. So, well, it's neat because as you do have this kind of engineering background and have been part of manufacturing, certainly it seems like you've had a chance to help lead in both like Lean and Six Sigma roles at different organizations. At the end of the day, are these meant to help operations? These are basically trying to help operations perform more efficiently. But I can imagine there's also a lot of crossover, at least philosophically, maybe with EOS. Did you see similarities, and do you kind of still use this kind of knowledge when approaching companies that you talk to on a consulting basis for EOS now?
So a lot of similarities, but they're not the same. And it's really that the focus is different. Now, Lean and Six Sigma, they are focused on flowing work and reducing variation. And EOS is really focused on execution at the leadership level. In my corporate days, I would have said at the enterprise level. But that being said, my Lean and my Six Sigma experience really helps me when I'm solving problems, and I am out facilitating these different groups. I've got a lot of cycles of learning, and I've gotten and seen a lot of different kind of problems, literally all over the U.S., all over the world. So that really comes to bear. And it is helpful for the odd process problem with maybe a few of my clients might have. So, yeah.
That's awesome. And I'm sure fun to, kind of think in that kind of capacity. I'm sure you see problems big and small all over the place, all over different kinds of companies that you work with. But, I guess in general, do you miss any of the engineering parts of your career?
Well, I'd be lying if I said no. I miss the discipline and the rigor of the engineering process. You're creating new products, you're fixing existing products. And also, I spent a lot of my career out in the field working on process and equipment projects, and I miss the camaraderie of the teams. And those issues also help me understand the issues my clients are facing and how important it is, and how they need to solve those issues, and they need discipline, and they don't always have the right tools and teams.
Yeah.
But,
That's really interesting, the fact that, you're kind of referring to the teams, because like almost every single EOS relationship, you have to kind of like come in and team build a little way, a little bit of the way, and like, make sure everybody's on board, and, yeah, kind of treat them like a team, and like you're on the team with them, because you
right.
got to take them to a place. So that's interesting. Yeah, I'm sure that was probably a huge part of the, getting the manufacturing stuff done.
Right, and that's the beauty of my experiences. I've worked with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of teams, and I really like that aspect: the development, the working, the mentoring, just resolving conflicts and getting folks on page, and that's the human dynamic of working out there. And nothing gets solved by yourself. It's always a team.
That is so true. Actually, I know that we've tossed out the acronym of EOS already quite a few times here, and I guess I'll apologize to the audience for not having defined it, because it's something Cullen and I, my business partner and I, live in every day. I know it's a big part of your world, but as far as EOS goes, you've been in there for the past 5 years, in this kind of world. For anybody who doesn't know what EOS itself is, can you explain it in a nutshell?
Sure. Okay. EOS stands for Earth Orbiting Satellites. Just kidding.
All right.
The Entrepreneurial Operating System. Okay? And EOS is it's a process that's there to help small and mid-sized businesses that want to stop fighting fires. They want to take control of their business, and they want to start growing. And I and other implementers around the world, we work with owners and leaders of these businesses to get a shared vision and a shared plan, and then create the discipline and accountability to execute on that plan. And in the process, we help them become a stronger team. And finally, EOS also helps the owners of these businesses to create more personal freedom, and also to help them turn their business into a performing asset, as opposed to a business that's dependent on them and to operate.
That's cool. And I will definitely say that, EOS has been really helpful in providing some organizational structure. I don't want to call anybody out, but I will definitely say, it's probably likely that there are a lot of creative companies, maybe like us, that got into it because they enjoyed the creative challenges, they enjoyed the problem solving, but, maybe at the end of the day, they weren't necessarily, built for a big enterprise structure. And I will say that it's neat. It's neat that there was a guidebook and a plan, and it was actually somebody who owned he was actually just about to take over their family pest control business, who had told me about EOS, and that's actually how I got into it. So it's cool to see how many industries, how many sort of places it's touching now. But as you get to deep dive from an organizational perspective into people's businesses, what parts do you see as being the most challenging for guiding a company? Is it teaching the process, or getting the leadership to sort of change and move?
I will say that both can be challenges, but getting the leadership team to change arises as an issue earlier in the implementation process. Mm-hmm. And that's really because from day one, we're asking you to change how you do business. And a lot of folks have done the same thing for years. And frankly, typically there's someone or several people on the leadership team that may not think that there's issues that need to change. Mm-hmm. So we just, we've got to challenge them. That's our job, is really get out there and help them see that the issues that are holding them back, keeping them from, that's keeping them on that same treadmill, and keeps them fighting the same fires they keep fighting day after day after day. Interestingly, that's why EOS was created. Gino Wickman is the creator of EOS. He's a real person in that. And he saw this trend. And he saw also that 1 out of 20 businesses were really successful because they were addressing it. And so he created EOS based on studying those successful businesses, and he wanted to extend that to the other 19 businesses and help them be more successful. And that's really how EOS became that's how EOS came to be.
That's neat. Yeah, I feel like it is. It's one of those things that you almost at a certain point, I'm sure you kind of see like, hey, we've got to do something different out of necessity. It does, I'm sure, for almost any business owner, feel like Groundhog's Day. Sometimes of just doing the same thing over and over and over. And I definitely, I appreciate EOS for kind of putting in some of that groundwork. But at its core, in my opinion, EOS isn't as much of a actual playbook as it is, kind of like a guideline or a framework. And it's meant to work across, a bunch of different industries. And sometimes it's hard to be prescriptive when you're that, general. But I assume this makes your role, the role of implementer, more critical. But how does it really, in your opinion, matter the most?
So, all businesses are different. All businesses are the same. It's our job to be curious and not jump down and just say, hey, there's just one solution. In the same category, all businesses have the same 6 key components: vision, people, data, issues, process, and traction. Okay. But they also have unique elements. So each of these are strengthened in different ways. And so as an implementer, I just really, I want to be curious. I want to serve as their guide. I need to help them implement EOS as the proven process and strengthen all of the 6 key components, then and help them create the discipline and accountability to continue to improve and grow, but while keeping the unique parts of their business. And then really helping them to create that ownership. As an implementer, my job is just to help them go deeper and address all the issues in their business, and then help them not backslide once they get started.
Yeah.
No, it's a good question. It's a subtlety.
Cool. Well, thank you. Yeah, no, I definitely understand. Yeah, keeping people on track is like the whole thing, because I'm sure it's very easy to get back into old habits. And as we kind of like dig deeper in this, and it's funny, I'm sure that some people maybe they'll listen, they'll understand some of these terms, but for some people listening to the podcast, this might be new. But I will say, the people analyzer is an important component of EOS. Have you ever seen this tool kind of not lead to the right conclusion about members of a team, or does it always seem pretty darn spot on?
So People Analyzer, used properly, will help you diagnose your people issues. Okay? And again, key is used properly. Used properly means that you do it together with other members of your leadership team and you collaborate in that. And always remember that Jim Collins was spot on when he said you need to get the right people in the right seats on the bus. EOS is the same way, we agree. And People Analyzer, which is a tool in the EOS toolbox, helps you do that by really assessing, do folks consistently exhibit your core values, which means they're part of your culture and they're right people, and are they good at what they do, which is right seats. And when you do it collaboratively, you get consensus, you get opinions, and you get dialogue that helps you. When you do it by yourself, you can introduce bias and you can make wrong decisions. And that's what you've got to avoid. And you've got to worry about that. So again, do it done right. And the other part about it is, with the People Analyzer, when you've had that discussion with your peers and you've ran through the process and used it properly, you also now have a counseling tool, coaching tool. Because now you have something to talk about and it's definitive. I need more of this, I need less of that, as opposed to, Brent, we need to talk. There's just something not right.
Yep.
And that can help people, because people, particularly in small businesses, have never typically gotten feedback.
Yeah.
And now they have something real, they have something actionable, and they can correct. And I will say that my experience, about 60% of the people that get coaching and definitively about culture or about improving their job performance do something, because now they know what to do.
Yeah.
Super powerful tool. Well, let me say this: if people are intrigued by the People Analyzer, first it's discussed in Gino Wickman's first book, Traction. But you also can go to the EOS worldwide website, www.eosworldwide.com, and go to the tool section, and you can learn more if you're intrigued by that. But super powerful tool used properly.
Yeah, that's great. And then I'm gonna follow it up with another thing that is also deep EOS stuff here, but also something I'm curious about, only because this one touches on something that definitively applied to our company, but the accountability chart, it helps identify things, not like an org chart necessarily, but what people are actually accountable for at a company. So we were missing both, guaranteed, and I feel like it's helpful to understand the structure. And we were very flat, and there were multiple different roles, hats, seats, trying to figure out what is somebody actually responsible for at the end of the day. And so I'm sure that business owners are sometimes filling multiple of these seats within an accountability chart. How would you say that you coach those situations as the visionary is filling a seat that reports the integrator or implementer, sorry, and then how do you coach through that?
So this situation is common in small businesses, or where an owner or owners have superpowers, and like sales or marketing, for example. Or make it okay first and say this happens. Don't shy away. A lot of times, because this is going to be the situation, folks think they're not ready for EOS, or they shouldn't implement EOS, and that's not true. What the accountability chart is, and really, if you have to kind of put a name to it, it's an org chart on steroids, because it clarifies the major functions in the role by saying what are they and what are the clear roles. No people can own the same responsibilities in the accountability chart, and it gets crystal clear on who owns what, and it drives account ownership. So you got to make it okay. So that's the first step. And when this happens, owners need to understand, and they need to accept one of the rules of the game, which is when you're in a function, you need to act as a function owner, and you are responsible for a function. You are not an owner at that point, and you are working with the integrator and respecting their decision as a rule of the game. There's another subtlety of this. As you create the accountability chart, and it's going to have multiple roles, you want to have a structure first, people second, because you want to make sure you get the right structure and the right roles. Then you figure out the people. Okay, you do that. So the other thing about this, even when you see it's going to be evident that there are going to be multiple people, are in multiple roles, you want to do this anyway, because what you also want to do is, as you start to grow, you want to see when you're ready to get a new accountability chart. And because you can see, I'm performing in this role, and I'm performing in this role, and this role. And so I've got these different roles, and they are expanding, as opposed to I'm just really super busy. And it helps you prepare and see when it's time.
That's cool. Yeah, I love the idea of the future casting on that. And honestly, it's funny as you talk through these things. It's having somebody who's there to do implementation is very, very helpful, because for people to look at some of these things on the surface and try to plot them out. You mentioned bias, and just a little bit ago, and I feel like that's got to be challenging. Whether that's individual bias or sometimes maybe even group bias. And having somebody else who can be a more agnostic third party to contribute, sort of like strategy, advice, guidance. It's definitely it's got to be helpful, and I'm sure people have thanked you for your ability to see through some of the challenges.
Yeah. No, and that's exactly right. We're sitting as a coach, and we're observing like a coach. And so often when you're in the game, you're very focused on what's happening with you. It happens to everybody. Happened to me when I was out in industry running my own organizations and my sites. And that. So as a coach, I get to give advice, and I get to challenge you and ask those questions that get you thinking. And the other thing is, some days you just got to call bullshit on solutions. Sorry to use a technical management term.
It's real. It's real.
Yeah, no, it is, and that's our role, and that's my joy. I like this because I get to go help a lot of folks. I get to see a lot of stuff, and go back to the always saying, never saying no. I like to be busy and be involved and see different stuff.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, as far as like, the ultimate goal for EOS, and you kind of brought this up as you introduced, EOS in general, is to work on the business rather than, kind of in or for the business. So this isn't an overnight change. And I think, yeah, you'd probably agree. And I'm sure, any other, business owner that has ever tried to turn the ship knows that, these things aren't really something you take lightly. But what are success stories or something that, maybe you've seen that, kind of reinforce that EOS really does deliver on its promise?
Right. But obviously, you wouldn't make change if you didn't want more success, and you didn't realize you've got to do something different. And that EOS offers you that. I will say that within 90 days, you start to see change, and you start to see that your issues are, if you, by the way, do the work. If you don't do the work, nothing's going to happen. It's just another thing. So you got to do the work, and that's what we're here to do, is help you get focused. But you see your issues being solved. You see more focus. You start to see your goals be achieved. That's the 90 days. As you start to implement in 6 months, a year, certainly you are then starting to see more success. And I've had a couple cycles of learning now, and privileged to graduate some great companies. But I had one client that they got in, they wanted to grow their business, and they wanted to have a succession plan created. And they successfully have done that. And we've seen that happen for them. So that was kind of cool. Another client created the process and structures to sell their business and retire, and they actually doubled their valuation.
Oh, wow.
In the process. So that was really cool. That's great to be part of. It's nice to get those phone calls from those people, by the way. I worked with a private equity company that was, it had been owned by Europeans, bought by private equity in the US, and they had a bunch of groups and companies around the country. They used EOS to consolidate, create a focused structure, and they then used EOS to create a platform where they're now acquiring other businesses around the country as a platform business for that private equity firm.
Wow.
And that's kind of cool for them to say thank you and attribute. They're on my website as a success story, and have a quote from the CEO. But yeah, you start to see the focus, you start to see the growth, you start to see people creating more sales, increasing profits, building stronger teams, and creating more freedom. And that's, like I said, it's nice to talk to those people.
Yeah, definitely. That has to be a joy. And actually that's a really neat example, especially of where this system may help people across cultural, sort of like, divides, find a common way, a common shared, sort of way of existing. Because like, not only are there obviously legal things, there's just general embedded cultural things, but when everybody gets on, as you mentioned, the same bus, and they're all going, they're in the right seats and go in the same direction, everything will work better. So that's really cool that it has international implications too.
Can I ask you to share what you've seen as success? Is your success in implementing EOS?
Yeah, definitely. I'm happy to. I will say that before EOS, we had a very typically flat structure. And, the thing that I feel like there's a lot of organizations that, may laud themselves on having, very little hierarchy. They feel very close to their employees that, work in that right next to them. And I will say that, that hasn't changed our feeling about like, the sort of the respect that we have to our employees, and the way that we sort of treat them. But I will say what it has done is change the nature in which how we see the organization in general. Because if you can understand your responsibilities, what you need to do for the organization, where you belong, and that brings new clarity that you can basically just employ and then start actually growing the business. Because before that, I will say that it was just kind of whatever referral business came in, we would lead that through the chains. We would just, sort of get the work done, and we grew marginally year after year, which was great, but it doesn't provide any sort of like clarity for somebody's long-term job role, sort of execution within the company either. And not that, EOS specifically prescribes that, but it can give you the vision and the framework and the foundation in order to start seeing that. So I will say, just understanding what your organization is from a top-down perspective, as opposed to just getting in every day and doing the work. It's night and day difference. So, and last year we grew 20% year over year. I mean, like, there's also thank you. It's also the financial things that come along with it. But when you have that structure, it just gives you a much better platform,
Oh, you bring up an interesting thing. People say, well, how do the employees of the business perceive EOS and do they think it's change flavor of the month or things? What I commonly hear is they're happy because they're getting the clarity, because they now see the leadership is focused. They've got priorities and goals, and they're solving issues. They're getting clear direction, and they really enjoy that because now they are getting to do what they do, have more focus also.
Absolutely.
And ultimately, we want to flow EOS down to every level of the organization when it's the right time. But they like the clarity EOS brings because the leadership is more clear.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Well, cool. Well, I've got one last question for you, and it's basically, what would you leave business owners with if you had one tip to give as they balance probably all of these roles, whether it be sales, leadership, production, and sometimes and usually more within an organization. And this could be a small company. It could be, maybe even a growing organization. But what if you had one tip?
Okay. Well, my mantra is less is more, but I'm going to do more is a bit more. I have 2.5 tips for you.
Okay. All right.
2.5. So first, if they want to implement the Entrepreneurial Operating System in their business, implement the entire system to strengthen all 6 key components, because you don't want to cherry pick. You want to get EOS's full value and benefit, and you don't want to potentially create any unintended consequences by just cherry picking across. Second thing is the accountability chart is how they're going to balance all the major functions of the business. And they need to follow structure first, people second when they do this. Okay. Do not go out and build an accountability chart based on the strengths and weaknesses of your business. You're gonna just sub-optimize, and it'll hold you back. Half point is create the accountability chart for the next 6 to 12 months. Do not worry about what the business looks like in 3 to 5 years from now. It'll be different. It will. But if you don't grow in the next 6 to 12, you'll never get to the 3 to 12 picture. So that's my 2.5 points.
Cool. Well, I like that. I hope you don't disagree with this, but I also want to, maybe toss out of just everything. Rome wasn't built in a day. I feel like there are so many people that want to bite off as much as they can and change the organization overnight. And and so, like, just as much as I definitely agree with your points. I also just I feel like the reassurance to business owners that they don't worry, it will happen. This takes a while, and you don't have to do it tomorrow.
You bring up a really good point, and that's one of the benefits, I think, of having an implementer. Not that you can't self-implement, what you have done, is we make it okay to wait, because we want you to be focused on the most important things and your capacity, and aiming for the mountain, hitting the mountain, and step by step achieving it. And that's okay. There is no prize for starting 25 things. The prize is completing 3 things and doing them well, and then doing the next 3 and the next 3 and the next 3. And EOS has structure and mechanism for you to create issues list and put them out there so you can get to them, knowing that you're working on the most important things. So to your point, focus. And you'll get there. And you'll get there quicker, by the way.
Yeah, oh, definitely. I think there's a guide who's about to do Everest for like the 32nd time or something like that, and I'm just drawing the parallel in my mind that that person has done that with a lot, and just as you see multiple organizations, the challenges, where there's going to be pain points, how to push past them, and as you advise people, it's always easier to get there with a guide.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. Well, cool. Well, this has been a lot of fun, John. I really appreciate it. Yeah, definitely. Thanks so much for being on the podcast. Any other things you want to remind the audience to go look at? I'll definitely put links and stuff in the description, but yeah, anything else you want to call out?
Well, my business coach would be mad at me if I didn't shamelessly plug me. No, it's seriousness. If you like what you've heard about EOS and you want to learn some more and see if it's right, feel free to call me. Let's have a quick chat. My number is 636-667-0579. Again, 636-667-0579. Or you can email me at john@drivingchangeinc, one word, .com. Also, if you'd like to look at the tools and learn more about EOS in general, we've got a website, great website called, it's at www.eosworldwide.com. And then you can go there and there's all kinds of stuff and free stuff for you to download. And Brent, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. This is a great conversation, and I always look forward to our conversations. So
Yeah, definitely. I know. This is fun. Every time we sit down and actually have a chat, whether it be at Breadco or otherwise, we get a chance to dig deep and definitely. And I must say, I always appreciate your engineering perspective. I feel like it's got to be helpful in the role that you're in right now.
Thank you for saying that. Appreciate it.
Definitely. Well, this has been another episode of Mix and Matchbox. I'm your host, Brent Feldman. We'll be back soon with more content. Please like and subscribe. Thanks.
Thanks.